And welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Kuehl Show. I am your host today, the insider, the insiders, Tyler Kuehl. Yes, guys, it is that time again. Another Thursday edition of The Kuehl Show, because that means it's playoff time. Playoffs. Yes, playoffs. Finally, we're at that point, guys. You know, it's been crazy. It's only a 56-game season, I know, but it's great to know that we've gotten to this point. It's exciting. And the reason why we have to do our playoffs, even though the regular season's still going on tonight, we'll probably talk about a couple of those games later on. Only an hour long today, of course. But we need to get involved here with the playoffs because they start this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Now, yes, Calgary and Vancouver play until next month, but that's neither here nor there. They're not in it. We got to talk about playoff time. But before we get to all that, we must talk about our awesome sponsors here on 12 Ounce Sports. Make sure you get involved there using the hashtag TKS. Watch us on 12 Ounce Sports on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Zingo TV, channel 761. Also, with the playoffs coming up and NBA playoffs as well, mybookie.ag. Get in there and win and get paid. Use the promo code 12 Ounce Sports to sign up and win on mybookie.ag. Don't ask me for playoffs because, I mean, let's be honest, my picks that I'm going to make, they're probably not going to be right, so don't bet on what I say, but go on there, mybookie.ag, and get paid. And as always, Second String Leather Company up there in the corner. Collection number 8 coming out, guys. Get yourself all geared up for the playoffs with the best and coolest stuff from secondstringleather.com. Hashtag crafted from the crease. Now, as you see in the ticker above my noggin here on 12 Ounce Sports. Now, of course, if you're just, listening, then you kind of maybe don't know what the ticker is. You see the playoff matchups, a lot of them starting up, like we said, Saturday and Sunday. Western Conference need to be determined, which that'll be determined tonight as Colorado looks to possibly jump Vegas for the President's Trophy, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. Maybe a little bit longer than an hour today. I feel like we had a lot to talk about. Jack Eichel, of course, as well. That whole saga. It's going to be a little bit interesting in the offseason there in Buffalo, but we're going to start off strong here, because we're going to talk to someone that we did talk to before on the show. Didn't quite go well, at least technically or technologically it didn't go well. So we're going to have a little bit of a redemption shot here. She is one of the hosts of Slapshot Sweethearts podcast, which you can catch up on Belly Up Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. A fan of the Boston Bruins and a fan of Brad Marchand. We give her a pass for that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Shannon Walsh. Shannon, how we doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, you know what, Shannon? The playoffs are upon us, and my wife is screaming out in the living room. She is happy for it, too. Shannon, how excited are you that the postseason is finally here?
I feel like it's a long time coming. I mean, especially with all these delays in the North and the West. I'm just sitting here as an East fan, like counting the hours until I can watch a game again.
It's so crazy. And I remember, well, the thing was, literally up until today, we didn't know. The only series that we knew about was Boston and Washington, which obviously we'll get to here in a second. But we didn't know when the rest were going to start. Obviously, the North is going to start the latest because Winnipeg has to play. Winnipeg and Toronto both have to play this weekend. So they're like, let's give them a break, while everyone else is like, well, you guys are actually going to end on time because you guys had your COVID issues earlier. Of course, then again, Vancouver had like a month off, it seemed like. But what is your feeling for the season as a whole around the National Hockey League? Obviously, like we said, you focus a lot of your attention on the East, but you do talk about, I've seen a lot of your guests on the Slapshot Sweethearts podcast. You have guests from the Central Division and the West and whatnot. What has been your overall feeling about this season in general? It's been a very odd year, to say the least.
Yeah, we do cover the entire NHL. So although, I mean, obviously we do have an inherent bias for the East just because that's where we grew up, that's where our teams are. But I mean, we've covered the entire league. It's been very interesting to watch, especially because of the shortened season. I mean, we thought that was going to be a detriment, but it's actually been the same way the NBA's play-in series has made everything a bit more competitive. I feel as though it's kind of the same for the 56-game season for the NHL. I mean, everyone's been competitive down to the wire from every division a little bit of a different way. So, I mean, I've been happy to watch it again, excited for the playoffs. It's a little bit of an interesting situation in the North. Vancouver and Calgary are just kind of playing these games out that don't matter at all. And so we're just kind of waiting until they can finish that up. But it's been great to see. I mean, all things considered, I think the NHL handled it as best they could without a bubble. So, I mean, I think it went well.
Out of all the possibilities it could be, because trust me, there were times early on, especially with Buffalo having issues and New Jersey having COVID. And of course, Dallas starting off the year with COVID problems. It just seemed like, man, is this gonna work? And of course, a lot of the folks in the North Division see, we got this in the bag. And then all of a sudden, Vancouver just gets lambasted with COVID issues. It's like, oh boy, maybe it's not perfect after all. But the only thing I can say, Shannon, this last point here before we get to the series between Boston and Washington, is the fact that there was no point this year, for me at least, I'll ask you if you have the same feeling, that this season was not going to, once it started, it was going to be completed in some shape or form, whether it be all 56 games are played or maybe only 50 and you have point percentage and whatnot. But the season was going to go through its entirety no matter what. Did you have that feeling? Were you feeling as blindly confident as I was?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I hate to keep comparing it to the other professional leagues, but you obviously have to because of the way that each of them has handled it a little bit differently. And when we were watching the NFL, everyone was like, they're forcing these games, they're making them play without their players. And the NHL did it in a manner, but they handled it in a different way. And I think for a while, particularly with the Vancouver situation, since, like you said, they had a month off, and it was a little bit different for the Devils because it was so early in the season that they could figure out that scheduling problem. But with the Canucks, it was so late in the season that it's like, do you continue to play out these games? I mean, if it were the Maple Leafs, I mean, I can't even imagine how the NHL would have handled it. Because,
they would have shut the league down. League would have been shut down.
Exactly. If it's a higher, someone in higher contention, the league handles it differently just because of inherent bias. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. But there was a time when I thought Vancouver wasn't going to finish their season, but that was the closest in which I really thought, we might be screwed here. I mean, we being the NHL, because I really have no connection to Vancouver, but I mean, that was the closest I thought to I don't know what the NHL is going to do here. And granted, it's a little frustrating seeing them play out all these Vancouver games just because I want the playoffs to start, but they handled it well. They figured out how to make up 15 or 20 games without seeing a huge impact in the North. So, I mean, good for them.
The crazy thing is, so they're going to start the playoffs, and Vancouver, it's funny, I look at the schedule online and on my app, and I'm like, all these Calgary-Vancouver games, but there's Islanders and Pittsburgh taking on each other the same night. It's the best way to describe it is when you're focused for the World Junior Tournament, and in a normal year with relegation in the top division, you're having the quarterfinals and semifinals, but at the same time on the same day, you're having the relegation series being played. It's like, oh, they're so cute. Yeah, Germany can play Latvia as much as they want, but let's focus on the big matchup now. But I think the real reason why these games are being played, because there were lots of talk to, once they become, out of the playoff picture, which, let's be honest, because they only had so few games played, that wasn't until, I believe, Wednesday when Montreal was able to pick up a point. But there was talks that once that happened, they were trying to cut it all together. But the problem
I was a proponent of them canceling that, but I know you're going to say the draft lottery was the big issue there. And I hadn't even thought of it just because the Bruins haven't been a draft lottery team in years. So it didn't cross my mind. But obviously they do have to play it out because they're playing the Flames, who are also in draft lottery contention.
Well, about to say, being a Leafs fan, we kind of had the draft lottery in our back pocket for a few. Pardon me. Well, we thought we did, but Edmonton decided to do that for us.
Yes.
But that, and also another thing that's kind of come out recently that I've also heard, performance bonuses. That's another thing that's also been a little bit of a thing with at least the player from the player side of things. The league side, obviously, the draft, which is going to happen eventually. And I got to see a good look at a few players when I did the U18s. But let's focus here on the playoffs. This is a big series coming up. And if you asked me heading into this year, a Boston-Washington series, I would not say first round because I'll be honest, I picked Boston to win this division because I thought Boston's going to do what they've done for the last 3 or 4 years, get good goaltending, beat up all the, pretty much the entire division and compete with Washington. I mean, now granted, Washington and Boston have not been the same division, but Boston, Shannon, it's been a weird kind of turn for them. They started to turn things back to normal and maybe on the positive side after the deadline. Because remember, we had you on, we talked about the big addition of Taylor Hall. He's looked really good. But overall, how do you think the Boston Bruins went from possible division champ contender to only finishing third in this division?
I think it says a lot not about the Bruins season, and I don't mean to come off biased, but I don't think it says a lot about the Bruins season. I think it says a lot about the competitiveness in the East. And something I was really harping on our particular show was that before the Rangers really lost steam in the last 2 or 3 games, there was less than 10 points separating first and fifth place, which, I mean, it says an incredible amount about what the seeding really means. I mean, with Washington up 6 points on the Rangers, who are not even in playoff contention, and then you look at the Central or the West, and it's like 15 points back to get to the fourth place seed competition. The East is so incredibly competitive in a good way. But I mean, people have asked me all week, who do I think is coming out of the East? And I genuinely cannot tell them, because I think both series are going to go at least 6 or 7 games. And I think the Bruins, I'm not surprised how their season went, because they had such a young core. They had significant losses in the offseason. And then the young core, slacked in the middle of the season, and they were able to make good additions at the trade deadline that really boost them. So they didn't have to rely on the top line as much. They could rely on the top 2 lines. And Taylor Hall and David Krejci have really clicked, which I think is going to bring them incredible momentum going into the series against the Capitals, knowing that the Capitals haven't been playing fantastic the last couple of weeks. But the competitiveness in the East is impossible to ignore when you look at these seedings and these points. I mean, I forgot the Bruins went up to third because they were just sitting in fourth, like a point back for a month? Like, I don't know. It's really interesting.
What's more surprising, Shannon, what's more surprising to you? The Bruins, I don't want to say the not having home ice advantage in these playoffs, but like you said, you kind of expected it just the way the core went. But the fact that they were able to bump to third, or the fact that Pittsburgh somehow won this division, which
Pittsburgh is the shock.
Oh man! At one point, I'm like, this team's not going to make the playoffs. I picked them not to make the playoffs. Then again,
I also picked. Yeah, I had them in 5th, and I had the Flyers in 4th.
I picked the Flyers in 2nd, and that's not looking too good either. But that's just how crazy this division is. But Washington, they're a team that bought the deadline, similar to the Bruins. They didn't make a lot of moves, but they made a big move getting Anthony Mantha. What makes this such a tight series going in? Because these teams have played really close games pretty much this entire season.
Yeah, I mean, the Capitals have had their core for years and years and years now. I mean, their core hasn't even changed since they won in 2018. They've made additions, and they've had a couple losses. Like Jacob Vrana in that trade was a big loss for them, even though he wasn't, a Niskanen or an Ovechkin or an Oshie. But what the Capitals are playing for is entirely different than the Bruins. The Capitals are playing because they have nothing to lose. They've got a year or two before they're going to enter a rebuild because that team is so old. Whereas the Bruins have a really young core, and they've got some key pieces that they are going to lose in the next couple of years. I mean, Bergeron's, I think, 34, 35 years old. David Krejci is around that same age. Even Marchand is, I think, 32. But when you look at the Capitals, they really are playing for another year or so before they're out of contention, particularly when you look at the Rangers and how much momentum they have in the next 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, I think they're playing for different things, and different things are going to, propel them and really get the momentum going on the ice. But the Bruins have historically played well against the Capitals this season, not in prior seasons. So I think that's a big part. And then you can't ignore the fact that Chara is on the other side of the locker now. I mean, Chara is going to be really emotional on the ice, and you cannot ignore playoff Chara. Like when he turns that on, it is a problem for the opposing team, and that concerns me a lot because it's really going to mess with the heads of a lot of those Bruins players who relied on Chara heavily to bring them forward throughout the playoffs.
Well, the thing with Chara, and this is coming from a guy that had to watch him literally beat up any Leaf that went to the front of the goal for 3 7-game series. I can tell you, he is the regular season to Chara does not matter. It doesn't. I mean, yes, it helps that he's there and he's able to help lead the team, but it's the playoffs and why he's still a valuable asset. He may not be the fastest, but boy, he's got a 10-foot long hockey stick, and when the playoff rulebook comes into play, that's his game, and that's what's going to really help Washington maybe be a little bit tougher against the Bruins team that's been historically a tough team to play in the postseason.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Chara, you said it. Chara's game completely changes in the playoffs, and it's going to be really difficult, especially because you haven't seen a lot of this young Bruins core play in the playoffs. I mean, we were joking on our stream that like the Providence Bruins were playing the other day against Capitals because we sat most of our core. But
oh yeah,
I mean, so much of our starters that they sat are only in their first or second season playing a full, 56, well, typically 82, but 56 games with the Bruins. And I mean, I trust Bruce Cassidy has done an incredible job bringing that core together, and Charlie McAvoy has brought those young Bruins defensemen to a level that I did not expect at all. But you can't ignore the fact that this was my concern going into the Winter Classic too, that if the young core cannot keep mental focused, we're screwed. We're absolutely screwed. So I mean, there's a lot riding on it. It's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to go probably 6 or 7 games, but I don't know. I can't. There's so much to consider.
Oh, I'm going to make my pick here probably right when we wrap up with you, but it's going to be wrong, no matter what it is. The only prediction I've ever gotten right on this show, well, I've had a couple that were close, but the only one I ever really got right that was actually huge was when before the Tampa Bay Lightning got swept by Columbus, I said they were going to win the Cup in 2020 because the best regular season team doesn't win the Cup anymore. And when I was right, I almost lost it because first of all, it's like the first time ever on this show. But this is the crazy part of this series is while there is the perfection line, Marchand, Pasternak, and Bergeron up there for Boston, and yes, there's Ovechkin there and Backstrom with Washington. The stars are there for both teams, but this is a series that you got to look further down the lineup. And Washington, maybe not so much, and it's a guy that I mentioned on this show, and it's never in a good tone, but it's Tom Wilson. How important, it's so crazy to look at this guy and think this is the X factor in this series, but unfortunately, that's the truth. That's the truth, Shannon. He is going to play big, and this is why I propose this question. How much do we see of Trent Frederick in this playoff series, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, Trent Frederick and Nick Ritchie have both been a point of contention for Bruins fans all season. Not because people are against them, but because they're both bringing the X factor in terms of enforcer that the Bruins need, but they're being healthy scratched because they're not skilled players. And so it's a really tough balance. If they were playing the Islanders, I would probably say scratch them because they're, at least for some of the games, because you don't need that enforcer player. But the Bruins also have, the Brandon Carlo hit that Tom Wilson had that took Brandon Carlo out until like a week or two ago. So I mean, they're going to have that going for them. Tom Wilson is on an absolute tear of dirty hits in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I can't imagine that's going to stop going into the playoffs. So that's going to bring, a different energy to the ice that we're going to have to contend with. And if these young Bruins players cannot keep up with a playoff Chara, a playoff Wilson, a playoff Ovechkin, all these guys that have no fear of throwing a punch, they're going to get beat down. And that's going to affect their mental focus as well.
And that's why, like I mentioned, Chara was such a big deal. And, I know I'm going back to my Leafs fandom here, but that 2019 series in that first round, the Leafs win game 1 pretty handily, and David Backes comes out and says, we played soft. Who's in the lineup next game? Backes is in there. Chris Wagner is in there. And they literally bullied the Leafs in game 2. That's what the Bruins are going to have to bring. And, while you want your skill guys to play their game, they're going to need to play that Boston Bruins hockey that has been pretty much synonymous with the franchise dating back to the 70s with Don Cherry, right?
Yeah. And it's going to be, if it goes 7 games, it's going to be an 8-game series because they literally just played. So, I mean, the chemistry and the buildup of anger between these two teams on the ice is going to come quickly. Not only, I mean, this isn't specific to the Bruins and the Capitals because every team is going to have to go through this, but how many times have they faced each other this season? Because of these division breakdowns, like all these teams have faced each other, 7 times? They have already built up anger toward each other for at least most of these. Some of these teams probably don't give a crap about each other, but there's already anger there that you're going to see in game 1, which usually takes until like game 4 to develop. So, I mean, it's going to be really interesting and it's going to be exciting to see that type of physical hockey as long as both teams can keep up with it.
Well, each team was 4-4, or they've each had 4 wins against each other this year. Boston had 4 wins. They lost 2 though in regulation to the Caps. So technically, they picked up 10 points, of the Bettman 10 points, if you will, though, against the Capitals. So they have that little bit of the advantage coming in. But the crazy thing, and I know it's going to sound dumb because it's going to sound like I'm harping on the Bruins like this, but boy, and it's going to sound like a Boston thing, the goaltending. That's the big, and of course, I say that, And looking at Washington, they have Vitek Vanacek they're probably going into this series with, a guy that's never had NHL playoff experience because Ilya Samsonov, for some reason, can't stay off the COVID list, and they probably won't have Kuznetsov. Well, they probably will, but there's an issue right there as well, but that's another story for another day. But Tuukka Rask and Yaroslav Halak. We went.
No, Halak's not playing actually.
You're right.
You're right. It's Jeremy Swayman.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Halak's gonna be out. Jeremy Swayman. That's what my point was gonna be. You're gonna have Tuukka Rask in there, but unlike every other year where you would have Halak being that 1B, and if Rask, last year was a very odd circumstance with everything, with having to take a personal leave, but you don't have that safety net in Yaroslav Halak now. Now you have Jeremy Swayman. As good as he is and as great of a goaltending prospect he is, you don't want to just kind of throw him to the wolves against Washington in the playoffs because he is a rookie. So how important is Tuukka Rask going to be going into this series?
Yeah, so Megan and I were guests on the Bottom Line podcast last night that we recorded, and we were debating this for a while because I was contradicting myself. We were talking about the Panthers Bolt series and talking about how Spencer Knight has looked incredible, and he had just played in the USA Hockey gold medal game, and he has this high stress game in his recent history. So it shouldn't be that far of a stretch to put him in a playoff game, right? They could probably go with this 1A, 1B situation. But then I was saying, Carter Hart has not looked great because they threw him to the Wolves and expected him to be the starter at 22. But then I was talking about the Bruins and saying, I am going to rely mentally, at least if I were Bruce Cassidy, I am going to rely heavily on Jeremy Swayman because Tuukka Rask has not looked good. He's a great goaltender. He is a point of contention in the Bruins franchise. However, he has not looked great in high stress games because his mental focus is horrendous. I know that's like what I keep going back to, but Tuukka Rask does not do well in high stress games because he's just not in it. And you can tell in 5 minutes in a game, you can tell if Tuukka Rask is mentally in the game or if he's not. And it shows very, very clearly, but they won't pull him because of that. You can't just say, you're not in it, we're going to put the backup in. So, I think they really need to go with the 1A, 1B situation because Tuukka Rask doesn't have the mental stamina to play the 7-game series without, taking a day or two off. And I don't want to throw Jeremy Swayman to the Wolves because, like you said, he's an incredible prospect and he looks fantastic. And I don't want it to be a Carter Hart situation, but I also don't want to lose this series because Tuukka Rask doesn't have the mental stamina. He's probably going to retire at the end of the season. Like, I don't know. It's a toss-up. It's a risk. It's a benefit and a curse.
The thing is and you say he's never good in game sevens, and all of a sudden I went back because unfortunately this is the 8th anniversary of Game 7. I've
seen quite a few videos of it today.
I've done a really thankfully I have another job that's able to kind of keep my phone off to the side while I'm doing some other writing because it's the you're gonna get me fired up, Shannon. It's not good. But that game, because people remember, oh yes, Boston won. See, Tuukka Rask won a Game 7. It was 4-1 for a reason, children. Cody Franson had 2 goals in that game. And then in 2018, it was 4-3 going into the third period. And then it was a 20-minute disaster for the Leafs. But once again, giving up 4 goals in a Game 7, that's what Tuukka Rask did. Now, yes, 2019 was whatever. There was a lot of screwdrivers involved in that, watching that game. But to your point, though.
Yeah, but that was Tuukka Rask's Vezina era. He was better then than he is now.
Yes, and especially in 2019, he was really good. And then, unfortunately, Game 7 at home in the Stanley Cup Finals didn't quite go so well. And I don't, now remembering that game, Shannon, you can probably correct me on this. I don't blame Tuukka Rask for Game 7 against the Blues, but then again, I may be wrong.
The entire team wasn't on the ice that night. There was a bad goal scored in the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then it was just, it looked like a bad preseason game. It was. I was personally at a Boston bar in Washington D.C. and standing on a patio in the pouring rain, watching that demise, and it was just absolutely horrendous. But there was not one player that you can blame for that. But every single one of them looked bad.
And that's what I forgot to mention here when we brought you on, Shannon. Shannon lives in Washington, D.C., so this may be a little bit of a odd series for her, because I'm trying to think the last time these two teams faced off in the playoffs wasn't it not 2012? Right? 2012 when Joel Ward scored in Game 7, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, they play pretty frequently in the regular season, and they play pretty frequently in important games, but they haven't – I think I just assuming they've played in the playoffs recently because they've played so often this season that it's feeling like that would have been the norm. But the Bruins playoffs are the Bolts, the Canadians, and the Maple Leafs. That's the historical norm. So.
But no, it's been a while since but the games they've been, of course, Frederick going after Tom Wilson earlier on this year got everyone fired up. This is going to be a and this is the best part about the first round is just always fun because there's just bonkers going to happen. By the time you get to the conference finals and finals, it's like we're still here. But early on, it's just wide open hockey. So now the question is here, Shannon. You said 6 or 7, but who takes it is the question.
I can't even remember what I said last night. I think.
Hey, if you change your mind, then you have 50-50 chance of getting it, right? We'll go with our show.
I think it's going to be 6 or 7, but I'm going to say Bruins in 6 because I can't ignore. I know it sounds biased, but I can't ignore the momentum that the Bruins have had since they have acquired Taylor Hall. It's absolutely undeniable. Curtis Lazar was a tack on so that they could take Taylor Hall's contract, and he looks fantastic. I mean, it's impossible to ignore everything they have going for them on the ice right now. And my only concern is that they've had too much time off and they're going to go into a new series with an entirely separate, goal and mental thing they need to set up and, shit the bed like they did when they got to the bubble last year, when they were the top of the division and then they had the bottom seed. But as long as that doesn't happen, their stamina right now is absolutely undeniable. And I think that they can really build off of that.
Curtis Lazar is, I don't want to say the biggest disappointment ever, up until probably this point because he looked his best. But I remember Lazar coming out of juniors. He played in Ottawa with the 67s, and he gets drafted. I'm like, all right, and he was a big player for the Canadian World Junior team back in 2015 when they won. And I'm like, man, this guy is good. He is legit. He's going to make it in the NHL, has a couple good stints with Calgary, and I'm like, oh, another great junior player. But you know what? Maybe just sometimes that changes scenery helps for a guy. Now, yes, he's not going to, I would say he's not going to be the guy that you're, highlighting in your spotlight in your pregame show, but the playoffs, the way they work, Shannon, you as well know as anyone else will know this, you need that guy on the fourth line that all of a sudden just gets
the Bruins have bad injury issues in the playoffs, so we do need that depth. And I mean, people said that Taylor Hall wasn't going to be that highlight guy anymore, and I think it's like you said, it's a roster chemistry thing. I mean, if you find the right fit, you can do amazing things and really recharge a career. So I mean, if Curtis Lazar and Taylor Hall want to be that highlight reel, then all the power to them.
Well, now actually, I'll leave you with this question here, Shannon. Obviously, the playoffs, Boston. You say 6. I'm going to go. Oh, just because I feel like Tom Wilson won't get suspended, I'm going to go Washington in 7 because no matter what Tom Wilson does, even though, I mean, he has 43, which you think, hey, you did it to Nazem Kadri back-to-back playoff years. You couldn't do it to Tom Wilson, but George Peros has something with Washington that he likes, I guess. But that's neither here nor there. That's another rant for another time. But with Taylor Hall's performance this year, does Don Sweeney write out a contract with Taylor Hall's name on it? And if so, how much for how long?
Yeah, no, he for sure tries to re-sign him. I mean, Taylor Hall should be trying to re-sign, not because he looks so great in Boston right now, but because I always like to compare him to people fresh out of college that change companies every year or so, and then their resume looks like crap because they can't commit anywhere. That's what Taylor Hall looks like right now. And if he leaves another place, he's going to look like he has commitment issues, which he kind of does. But I mean, if he doesn't sign with Boston, I don't know that other people are going to try to sign him, or he's going to get no money. So if he's able to really support the Bruins in the playoffs, he can probably get pretty good money. I mean, he made a crap load from Buffalo. Maybe $4 million, $5 million.
So $8 million was the contract, but somehow Don Sweeney was able to tell Kevin Adams, hey, you're a first-year GM. You don't know anything. Take 50% of it and give us Curtis Lazar too. And Kevin Adams, sure. We'll get to Kevin
John
Adams
Sweeney
later on the show.
Absolutely fleeced him. I don't know, maybe $4 million, $5 million if he really has a great playoff run.
Yeah, it was Taylor Hall. I mean, I remember the interview right after he got traded. He said he'd like to stay in Boston, and obviously the way he's played.
He said it recently too.
Yeah, and shoot, if he plays like that, I think for him a good 3 or 4 year contract, maybe not $8 million, but something in the good ballpark of, like you said, 4 to 5. I think Taylor Hall would like that because hey, he's going to get the play. He's going to get the minutes with with Bergeron getting older and Marchand and Pasternak getting. I guess they're all the same age. Those guys are, but
yeah, Pasternak's only 23. So, I mean, Taylor Hall and Pasternak on the same line. Once the other guys get older, could be incredible.
That's true. Boston is as annoying as. See, that's the one thing I guess I didn't miss about this season. Watching the Leafs, like we don't have Boston this year. It's just Montreal and Edmonton. Now, yes, those fan bases already hate us as it is, but Boston, it's like if we lose to Boston, it just rehashes all the bad memories. See, we don't have that against Edmonton or Montreal because the Leafs are playing Montreal in the playoffs for the first time in 42 years, and they've never played Edmonton in the playoffs. So it's like, at least we don't have to worry about that. It's Boston. It's like, here we go again.
Yeah. It's like a rite of passage that, we play Montreal in the first round and then we play whoever's next.
Oh, for a few years that was the case, right? Like there was 02, 04, 08, 09. I think 09 was when Boston finally beat Montreal in the first round, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. Well, I went to before I moved to DC, I went to a Montreal-Boston Game 7 like a while ago, and they lost to Montreal. And it was not safe to be in Boston for that evening. And I was not 21 or anything. I was like a child. And it was like chaos.
I believe that was 04 because Bergeron won Game 6 in overtime. This is how dumb my memory is, Shannon. Won Game 6 in overtime. That was his rookie year in 04. He won it in Montreal, in his home province. They came back. Boston had all the momentum, and yeah, Game 7 happened. See, even Boston fans know, folks, what Game 7 is like against, losing to a Canadian team, except Toronto, it's reversed. It's not good. I'm scarred. We're all scarred.
Playoff game in Boston and they lose to the Canadians and you never go back.
Exactly. We have been talking here with Shannon Walsh of Slapshot Sweethearts podcast. Catch them on the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. Check out her work with Megan. They just posted a video earlier today. I just had it up, but I lost it. There it is. They talked with Riley. Is Riley Tuft or Tooft?
Tufty.
That's what I was right. Plays with the Dallas Stars organization, plays for the Texas Stars as well. They had an interview with him. Check that out. You can catch it on their YouTube channel as well. So if you're watching on 12 Ounce Sports YouTube, check it out. Slapshot Sweethearts after this show, of course. Wait till we're done here on 12 Ounce, and then you guys can go watch it. It's up forever. That's the perks of on demand. Shannon, thank you very much for taking the time today. Enjoy the playoffs, and maybe we'll talk to you again, of course, given that Boston wins around.
Yeah, thank you so much. And anybody listening, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. We'll be streaming pretty much every night throughout the playoffs with live coverage. So feel free to check that out. And thank you again for having me.
That'll be fun. Hey, I tune into those. Those are always fun because you guys rant and rave about hockey during the actual games. It's kind of fun. Like a little bit of extra commentary. That's, sometimes better than what they have on NBC. That's why they're not there.
Right?
Anymore.
It's like you're watching at a bar.
Exactly. And the best part is you don't have to pay for drinks there either. That's the best part, right?
Exactly.
We'll take a break, folks. When we come back, more playoff preview coverage and Jack Eichel talk here on 12 Ounce Sports.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money. And we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Kuehl Show here on 12 Ounce Sports. Thank you once again. Huge shout out to Shannon Walsh joining us from the Slapshot Sweethearts podcast. Catch that on Belly Up Sports Podcast Network and also their YouTube channel as well. Like she said, we still have a lot of playoffs coming up. I thought this was going to be a one and done playoff preview episode, hence why we did it on Thursday. And, well, kids, that's not the case because the NHL announced today the schedule for the playoff series and when they're going to start. Now, yes, like I had mentioned prior, folks, this was going, or they announced it, and there is still a little bit of seeding to be determined. That coming out of the West Division because LA and Colorado play one more game tonight. Colorado wins, they take the top spot and the President's Trophy. First time since, I believe, 2001 that they win the President's Trophy. Big story, obviously, for them. And you know what? It's crazy because they obviously handled LA last night, 6-0. JT Compher, by the way, with the hat trick. They're starting Jonas Johansson in goal. Obviously, it's a back-to-back situation, but you wonder what their depth's going to be goaltending-wise going into these playoffs. That's going to be the big question, I think, for Colorado. Obviously, they have the talent up front. McKinnon, Landeskog, Compher, obviously. They have depth pieces like Kadri. Jonas Donskoy's played well as well for Colorado. So probably get Eric Passolano maybe sometime next week to talk about it. But so I'm not going to preview the West yet, even though it's going to start actually Monday night. Or they'll start Sunday night with the playoffs. Monday night will be one series. So Colorado and Vegas. If Colorado wins tonight, they will play St. Louis starting on Monday. However, if they lose or only get 1 point, Vegas gets the top spot. They'll play St. Louis starting on Monday night. Colorado or whoever gets the number 2, Colorado or Vegas, they'll take on Minnesota starting on Sunday. Now, I have to reach out to a guest because we should be having someone on for that series on Monday night, which will be our typical time, 6 to 8:30. We also have another guest confirmed for that date as well. So we'll have a couple guys to talk to on the show Monday to talk about a couple of series. The North Division, we won't do that yet because we can save that for Monday's episode. Why, kids? Because, well, they don't start until Wednesday. Edmonton and Winnipeg, that is the 2 versus 3. Edmonton, the 2 seed. Winnipeg somehow holds on to the 3 seed despite the way they played towards the end there. They will face off in Edmonton on Wednesday, the 19th. That's their first game with potential Game 7 being all the way on May 30th. The Leafs in Montreal, the series, like I mentioned, first time in 42 years these two teams face off in the postseason, will be on next Thursday, the 20th will be the first game. So a week from now will be the first game for the Leafs. The reason why they want to give teams a few days off before they start the playoffs. Leafs play Friday. I believe Montreal does as well. I'm not quite sure. I don't have their schedule right up in front of me. But regardless, there is a lot to get excited about. But we'll break down a couple other playoffs that are going to start then. Like I said, we'll leave the West and the North for Monday's episode. Mainly because we can kind of wait on Monday, because Monday's game between Colorado or Vegas versus St. Louis is not until 10 o'clock at night, because no matter what, that game will be far out west. We'll probably just do a preview with the Minnesota Wild series kind of after talking about that first game. Like I said, we have someone coming on for that show, hence why we're saving it for them. But let's go with we mentioned the Washington-Boston series. Let's get into the Pittsburgh-New York series. This is the second time in 3 years that these two teams have faced off in the postseason. The last time, of course, with the New York Islanders sweeping the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2019. This is a very interesting matchup because, like I mentioned with Shannon, who would have thought that the Pittsburgh Penguins were going to be the team that not just has home ice advantage against the Islanders heading into the season, but is the number 1 seed, the division champions? Let's be honest. With Malkin out at times, with Crosby out at times, Letang in and out of the lineup, Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith as their goaltenders, who was thinking that Pittsburgh was going to be the team to win this division, this highly competitive East Division? And that's not a slight at the fact that this East Division's bad. No, this has been a very tough East Division to play in because you have Washington and the Islanders and the Devils, who were just, and people are like, oh, the Devils, how they suck. That was a pesky team. That was the East Division's version of the Ottawa Senators, who just beat the Leafs, by the way, last night with Frederik Andersen in goal. Now, that's because Frederik was rusty AF, but that's a story for another time. I'm really excited about this series because can Barry Trotz get the Islanders to redeem themselves? And by redeem themselves, I mean just kind of try to turn the tide the way this season has gone. While goaltenders Ilya Sorokin have looked good and Semyon Varlamov have played well, they have not played well enough to be the best team. They were sitting in third for the longest time, like Shannon mentioned, before Boston finally jumped them late in the year. But it's all of a sudden looking like the sort of deal where all of a sudden the Penguins are looking like the Penguins that we remember from the early 2010s. Always up there towards the top of the division, very tough to play against, almost unbeatable at times. But you wonder, is the age going to get there for this hockey club? For the Pittsburgh Penguins? Is that how it's going to be? I'm not sure. I really don't know. I mean, obviously, you're going to need guys really stepping up. Matthew Barzal, who led the team with only 45 points. But then again, this, of course, I say that, and I totally have to remind myself that this is a Barry Trotz team. Doesn't matter how many points they get, as long as they get more than the other team. Keep the puck out of the back of the net. That's the deal. Varlamov this year, he's been pretty good for the most part, like 19, 11, and 4, 929 save percentage, 7 shutouts on the year, very high number, 204 goals against average. But I think the big thing coming in here for them is the fact that they don't have the scoring depth that Pittsburgh has. Dare I say it? Hart Trophy candidate, Sidney Crosby. Now, he's not going to win it. Connor McDavid's going to win this year, guys. Let's be honest. But look at how good the defense is for this team. But then you have to point the fact that Tristan Jarry has been pretty solid this year. 25-9. Is fourth in the league in wins, 909 save percentage. Maybe not the some of the best analytics in the league, but you're looking at guys that just for some reason have had great years in goaltend. Like I said, Varlamov and Sorokin. Sorokin, his first full year in the National Hockey League, 918 save percentage, kind of about average, 217 goals against average, 13-6-3. Not awful. But the problem is their scoring or lack thereof. Let me just quick go here to NHL.com. That's what I've been trying to pull up here. Connor McDavid finished with 104 points. I can't believe they guessed that right. I was listening to Hockey Central the other day. And I think it was Justin Bourne that said, he's not going to finish at 100, right? He's going to finish with 104. He finishes with 104. They have one game left to do. So I say keep him out of the lineup just for that sake. But I'm going down the list here, trying to find where 45 points sits in this. That's tied for 39th in the National Hockey League. The same number with Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman, by the way, yes, probably. I mean, even though he's not the best this year compared to others, even Chris Letang. I mean, Jason Robertson, who only played 51 games, has 45 points as well for the Dallas Stars. So that's my point. In this series, they're going to have to combat the off. They're going to have to stop the Pittsburgh offense. The Islanders are not going to score their way out of this series. Then again, I don't think that's Barry Trotz's mentality. Within Washington, he kind of had that ability with Backstrom and Ovechkin and Oshie. He had those kind of guys. That was probably the fortunate part for him there. Now with the Islanders, he realizes this is going to be a defensive team. But the problem is, though, I don't know if the Islanders are going to be, while they may control defensively at times, they probably may lose every game this series. Every loss they pick up may be a 3-2 or a 2-1 loss, just because they can't find a way to put the puck in the back of the net. Now, you think maybe with Tristan Jarry, you can probably do it, but I don't know, guys. You got to first be able, you got to find a way to find guys that can pick up the slack offensively. That's the hard part for the Islanders going into this. If they do it, you're right. If they pull it off, they're going to have to somehow score more than 3 goals a game. It's going to be hard, though. It's going to be really tough for them. And that's why, oh boy. All right, here's my, pick. I'm going to go Pittsburgh, obviously. I'm going to go Pittsburgh in 5. Pittsburgh in 5. It's going to be low scoring in all 5 of those games, but yeah, I'm going 5 there for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They move on to round 2 there in the East Division. And like I already made, so it'd be Pittsburgh versus Washington, 2 versus 1. Again, Pittsburgh, Washington in the playoffs. Haven't heard that story before, eh, guys? Let's go on over to the Central Division. This will be the other one we'll talk about today. Like I said, we may go a little over an hour today. That's okay. There's nothing going on until later tonight here on 12 Ounce Sports. The Central Division is beginning to look a lot like a complete and utter kerfuffle, at least not in the first round. Carolina versus Nashville. I love good buddy Peyton Turnage, member of the Five Timers Club here on the Kula Show. And of course, had an absolute blast with Pete Weber when we had him on last summer before the playoffs, before the bubble playoffs in 2020. Yet, I don't know how you don't pick Carolina in this series. And yes, is goaltending a question? 100%. If Peter Mrazek and Alex Nedeljkovic absolutely poop the snoot, boy, this is going to be an interesting series. But to be fair, UC Saros has earned my respect. The way the playoffs ended last year for Nashville, just the way they got dismantled by the Arizona Coyotes, who got throttled by Colorado the next series, it just kind of showed that Nashville is done. And let's be honest, through Christmas, or pardon me, once the season started, through my birthday, well, I say Christmas. Well, going into the season at Christmas time, I didn't think much of Nashville either. But going into Valentine's Day until dang near St. Patty's Day, I was pretty well certain that Nashville was out of this thing. There's no way. But you're getting ready for trades. Ekholm's getting traded. Ellis is getting traded. Everyone's getting traded except for Pekka Rinne because his contract was awful. And Roman Josi, of course, because he's your captain and he's still your best player. But yet they turned it around. You saw a lot of guys step up. You saw a lot of, a lot of players that have been pretty quiet start to play well as the season wore on. Now, yes, we talk about how bad the scoring was for Matthew Barzal getting 45 points. Once again, Roman Josi led the team with 33. But you had Mikael Granlund, who was on the trading block, pick up some slack. Eli Tolvanen, when he was in the lineup, of course, was able to play well. If I'm not mistaken, let me just go down the list here. There was not a single Nashville Predator this year that played all 56 games. Not even Roman Josi, who missed time. Now, yes, that doesn't hurt because of, obviously, there was COVID issues and whatnot with the Nashville Predators. But it's so strange to look at all this. And you wonder what the plan is going to be this season. Obviously, Saros is going to be your goaltender. But my thing is going up against Carolina. As good of a story that this would be for Nashville to come all the way back and win the first round, this is not the 2017 Nashville Predators that are going up against the top seed in the division in Chicago at the time and pull one out of their behinds because they got a really hot goaltender. Carolina just seems overwhelmingly better. Overwhelmingly better than the Predators, who made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, by the way, in 2017. This Predators team was not even as good as that team, that 4 seed, going into those playoffs. And the Carolina Hurricanes are better than the Blackhawks were that year as well. That was obviously the end of that run for the Blackhawks. and Pecorino, stole that series. I don't see that happening here with UC Saros. Look at the Hurricanes. Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho. I mean, the list goes on and on with this hockey club. And you have a coach who, while it's apparently not official yet, even though I said on Monday's show, Sunday's show, that Rod Brindamore has signed his extension. It's not official yet, but that's what it's going to be. But just go down, Sebastian Aho, Vincent Trocheck, who's been great. Dougie Hamilton, who was supposed to be an afterthought after getting moved from Carolina, all of a sudden having another great year. Marty Necas, Jordan Stahl, 32 years old, 38 points, though, in 53 games, not too shabby. Brett Pesce, Warren Fogle, Teuvo Teravainen. This is a deep lineup. And I'm not even talking about their defense core, which includes guys like Brady Shea and Jake Bean, who played 42 games this year, and Jacob Slavin, that's it. We're going to say it right now. Carolina is no longer the underrated team with any underrated players. They have everything in their favor right now to absolutely beat the wheels off the Predators. If UC Saros stands on his head, they make it a 6 or 7 game series. But guys, I don't know. I'm going to go Hurricanes in 5 in this series because Nashville will get a win at home ice because with a lot of teams in the South, they're allowing a few more fans in now. I think Bridgestone Arena, Nashville's going to be hopping. Going to be rocking quite a bit for them. But they'll get one win, but that's it. Hey, Dad, by the way. Nice to see you, Dad. So it's a tough way to end for Nashville. The great run they had to get into a playoff spot, which took them literally up until their second to last game to actually clinch a spot over Dallas. Dallas was right there till the end. But it's going to be really hard for them. They're going to have a tough time against the Hurricanes. The other one in the Central. This is the fun one, kids. Florida, Tampa. The first time ever since the Florida Panthers came in 1993-1994. This is the first time ever that the two Floridian hockey clubs are going to face off in the postseason. Because somehow, some way, these two teams have just done a really good job of not being good at the same time. Now, of course, that is because of the fact that the Florida Panthers have seemingly never done well, even though they have won 2 division championships in their time. Not even 96 did they win the division, their division, the Southeast. Was it the Southeast back then? I don't remember what the Wales conferences were before, or Wales divisions were before 2000, before the Leafs got into it. Because I believe that was the Southeast division. I think they had 6 divisions at that time when they did the full split, once they started bringing in the expansion clubs. But 2012, they get knocked out in the first round in 7 games. 2016, they get knocked out. And you know what? They had a tough go last year in the play-in round against the New York Islanders. But boy, this year's team is just so much different, guys. It's exciting to look at. In the year, and I keep saying it on this show. I know, guys, getting a little annoying, but the year I don't pick the Florida Panthers as my dark horse team, all of a sudden decides that they have no pressure on them, I guess, and they're going to be one of the best teams. They were leading this division for quite some time, guys. Don't forget. Now you got to look at the top and say Joel Quenneville and say, like, this guy is figuring it out. Don't forget, last year, his first year, we'll give him the bypass on that one. Wasn't the best because, hey, he's trying to figure out what it's like to work in the sun. He's worked in St. Louis, he's worked in Colorado, and he's worked in Chicago. 3 markets that during the hockey season, the weather's maybe not the best. All of a sudden he goes to Florida where it's 95 degrees from sun up till sundown, 365 days out of the year, 366 on a leap year, and he maybe had to try to figure it out. Now, this has been a good, I'm really intrigued by this hockey club because for a couple of reasons. One, obviously you have Johnny Huberdeau right there, Sasha Barkov, and a guy by the name of Carter Verhaeghe, which up until this year, if you said you knew who he was, you were clearly a Florida Panther fan and no one else. Because having him up there with 36 points, which is tied for third in the hockey club, is incredible. Obviously, Anthony Duclair has been an absolutely worldly different player. We didn't know where he was going to play this year, but you thought, man, whoever picks up him, he could do something for that team when he was not going to be brought back by Ottawa. What happens? Goes down to Florida. How about this? One of his best seasons ever, even in 43 games, 32 points this year for Duclair. Keith Yandel, 34 years old, 56 more games. The long consecutive game streak continues for the defenseman, 27 points. I remember I mocked him a couple years back when he made it to the All-Star game, but he's showing that he is maybe not an All-Star, but a very talented defenseman and still worth mentioning in the National Hockey League. It's going to be interesting how they're going to, obviously disperse everyone. You have Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett, who came over at the deadline from Calgary, to Florida. I was really concerned about him because I'm like, all right, it seemed like things were going to get better with Calgary because he seemed like a Daryl Sutter player, but they give him a chance. And you know what? In 10 games, 6 goals, 9 assists. He's fitting in well with Joel Quenneville because you go from a grumpy old man in Daryl Sutter to a ticked off grumpy old man in Joel Quenneville at times. Maybe it works out for him with those kind of guys that he plays with. The big thing I think that Tampa has in the series then against Florida, like I said, folks, we're going to go a little over the hour here today because of the playoff series. The thing about Tampa, well, I say that, but then again, let me go, just quick check this here. I didn't get the official word, but Victor Hedman, once again, having some problems. So he's back at practice, eyeing postseason return. Victor Hedman, who's missed the last couple games for Tampa at the end of the regular season, he says he should be back. For some reason, this just completely points 2019 to me all over again. Now, granted, that was the year they won 62 games for Tampa, so there may be not as much pressure on this hockey club, but man, losing Victor Hedman right before the playoffs. Don't forget, the Panthers are without Aaron Ekblad, who was having an incredible year up until that gruesome knee injury he had just a short while ago. So now you're looking at two teams, arguably without their two best defensemen. Mackenzie Weegar, though, has been exceptional this year for Florida. Let's not hide ourselves on that. But you still look at these two teams. Tampa still has an amazing D-core. I'm not going to lie to anybody about it. But is all of a sudden, and now this is not just because of the fact that, Florida's the higher seed, but is Florida the better team? Is that the case here? I mean, yeah, you still have up there. Like I said, Hedman's up there, but obviously his health is in question. Mikhail Sergachev's having another great year. Eric Chernak is going to be a huge depth piece, and you still have Ryan McDonough, who's a tough guy back there. You need the right pieces in this lineup. I dare I say it, guys. First of all, I'm excited to see Anton Strahlman go against his former team in these playoffs. D-core versus D-core, who do you pick? Literally up until this year, anyone with a simple one brain cell could pick Tampa. But all of a sudden this year in general, if Hedman's 100% come game 1 on Sunday, you're right. Yes, Tampa's got the better D-core right there because they have Norris Trophy winning Victor Hedman right there on the blue line. But without Victor Hedman at 100%, all of a sudden, Florida looks like the team that has the better defense. Now, yes, it helps that they have an all-role goaltender. Yep, I'm throwing that tag on Vasilevsky, kids. He gets it. 31-10, 9.25 save percentage, 2.2 on goals against average, whatever. 5 shutouts. Vasilevsky may end up, he may not, it's hard to not think that he's going to be in the Vezina conversation. I think this year more deservingly than last year that he's in the conversation. He may not win it again. We'll get to that when we get closer to trophy time. But Vasilevsky's having a great year. This is probably where the victor goes to Tampa. But while Tampa has Andrei Vasilevsky, starting goaltender, how are you not looking at the tandem in Florida and saying that's better? Because look at it this way, guys. Yes, Sergei Bobrovsky. He did okay, 19-8-2, kind of started to turn things around. 2.91 goals against average. Yikes. But they have Chris Drieger. Remember we talked with Ty Little from Litterbox Cats? How much of a breath of fresh air and a surprise that he is. It's so outstanding to look at the way this kid has come on this year. But the question is, can he beat Vasilevsky? Bobrovsky has shown he can. But is Bobrovsky the Bobrovsky of 2019 that beat Vasilevsky? I don't think so, guys. Do we see Chris Drieger in game 1? Maybe. But with that, that's probably the best thing Joel Quenneville has in his back pocket right now, is the fact that he is able to say, all right, Chris Drieger, you know what? Not a great start in game one, kid. Let's go Bob in game two. Because there are back-to-backs in these playoffs. Right? No. Yes, I thought there were. Not in this series. I was wrong. Oh, well. But long story short, there will be, at some point, there's got to be a back-to-back, especially with the fact that, you may have to move some games around for some reasons, but hopefully we don't have to get to that point. But I like Tampa's goaltending more. I like the tandem better in Florida than I do Tampa. Florida than Tampa, excuse me. I'm getting my words mixed up. Is coffee done yet? No, it's not. Hold on. There we go. No more wrong words the rest of the show. Knock on wood. Even though it's got like 10 minutes left on it, probably. I'm looking at this series and I'm trying to think who I want more. Because as far as we know, as dumb as it may sound, nope. Okay, that's right. Yep, I was right. Nikita Kucherov is going to probably be coming back in the lineup for the playoffs. Nikita Kucherov, who's missed the entire season, by the way, after surgery. I wonder how this is going to play out. I mean, can he come back and be a big-time player? Now, I'm going to make a reference here, and you're going to have to take a grain of salt with it. Peter Forsberg missed the entire 01-02 regular season. And had it not been for Steve Yzerman playing in the Stanley Cup Finals, those 5 games, Peter Forsberg, who I think was 1 point behind Yzerman for playoff scoring, would have been the leading scorer, only playing in the first 3 rounds. That's how good Forsberg was in those playoffs. Now, once again, I have to remind myself that was 2002. Game was a little different back then. But we know how talented Kucherov is. And if he can get into game shape and maybe take a couple games 1 and 2 to get going, he could be a key factor. That said, if Florida doesn't let Tampa get into the series and let Kucherov get into rhythm, it may be a wasted roster spot. And that's why I'm going to pick in this series. Oh, man. I picked. This is tough for me because I don't. Here we go. Not a dark horse pick, but I'm picking them this year. The Florida Panthers win in 7 games against Tampa. There's my pick. We're going to do more picks on Monday, of course, because, like I said, we're going to preview the 2 West Division series and the 2 North Divisions as well on Monday's episode. Game 1 will be Game 1 of the Minnesota Wild series, whoever they play, whether it be Colorado and Vegas, that will already be played, yes. So I can't give you a pick. We may throw the tweet out there of what the picks are for the show before that series, because obviously, I mean, I don't know who would be if I pick Minnesota over either Colorado or Vegas, but you know what? I may change my mind tomorrow. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. That's why I'm making these picks now, so you guys can hold them to me later on during the season. So last thing here before we let you all go here on this Thursday evening, let's just get it out here. Jack Eichel. Actually, you know what? Do I want to save Jack Eichel for Monday? We'll see if we have time Monday. Well, for those that don't know, Jack Eichel had a press availability earlier this week, pretty much saying that he wanted to get herniated disc surgery, vertebrae disc surgery, but the team doctors would not let him. And apparently, according to him, it was not that easy. Apparently, he did not get a second opinion on it, which has obviously held him back. That's why he was not able to return to the lineup, because he was injured because of his neck. Is he going to get a surgery in this offseason? We don't know. He obviously made it pretty clear. He didn't say it straight up, but he was pretty obvious that he does not want to be a Boston. What does not want to be a Buffalo Sabre? He may be a Boston Bruin if, once again, if Don Sweeney can convince Kevin Adams to take up a chunk of salary. We'll get to Buffalo, I think, a little bit more in the offseason if something doesn't happen here soon. But Jack Eichel, disgruntled in Buffalo, probably won't be a Sabre next year. We'll maybe dive into that a little bit more on Monday night. But that is it for this week's show, folks. This quick shift edition of TKS, playoff edition, number 1 on Thursday. In a couple weeks, we're going to have to do earlier shows because I have to do the evening shift at the radio station, but they will be live here at least they will be at our time slot, 6 to 8:30 Monday night, 6 to 7 on Thursdays, just like we did last year for the playoffs. They will be on 12-ounce sports. Those earlier shows may be live on our Kuehl Show YouTube and Twitter as well, and Facebook, so be sure to check that out as well. And of course, folks, just a reminder, make sure you follow us. Hashtag TKS at The Kuehl Show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So when we do go to those special early day shows, that you're ready for. Because if you're not, then you may miss out. You may miss out to me reacting to some breaking news, even though it'll be the morning during the playoffs. So hopefully there's no breaking news. Then again, I've been wrong before, and I'll probably be wrong again. So that is it for this Thursday edition of the show, folks. We'll come back Monday. Possibly one for sure. Possibly two guests on the show. A couple big names as well. We'll talk more later on this weekend. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, folks, and get ready for some playoff hockey. It's exciting. We're ready to go. That's been it for this one here on the Inside of the Insiders. Tyler Kuehl saying so long from the Kuehl Show here on 12 Ounce Sports.
Disappear, we